Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. See, we're still getting a few folks trickling in. Alrighty, I'm gonna get started now. So welcome and bienvenidos. Before we begin the official presentation, I'd like to let everyone know that we're offering Spanish and American Sign Language interpretation during today's meeting. I'll read the instructions for joining the Spanish interpretation channel in English, and then one of our two Spanish interpreters will read them in Spanish. Simultaneous interpretation is being provided. English speakers may need to select English as their language. To access Zoom from a computer, click the globe icon located at the bottom of the screen. Choose English. If you are accessing Zoom from a smartphone, you'll click the three dots above where it says More on the bottom right side of the screen, choose Language Interpretation, choose English, and then press Done on the top right of the screen.
Buenos días. Esta presentación se llevará a cabo con interpretación simultánea al español. Vamos a dar las instrucciones para acceder al canal. Si usted nos acompaña a través de un computador, vaya a la parte inferior de su pantalla en cuanto den la instrucción. Terminando estas instrucciones, va a haber un globo terráqueo en la parte inferior y apriete ese botón, seleccione español y usted puede también apagar el audio original si solamente desea escuchar una voz. Si está utilizando un teléfono inteligente, apriete los tres botones, desglose en la lista hacia abajo donde dice interpretación, elija español y muy importante, presione la tecla Done para poder ejecutar la acción. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Heidi. All right, we can move on to the next slide. Perfect. So before we begin, I want to ask if there are any technical issues. Is everyone able to hear us, see the slides, and are the Spanish and ASL interpretation working? Fantastic. I'm getting the go-ahead. Okay, well, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Catherine Canepa, and I'll facilitate today's work group for the fiscal year 2025-2026 Clean Transportation Incentives Funding Plan, which is focused on the individual incentives or the light-duty vehicle purchase incentives. Note that we also call the plan the funding plan for short. Here are a few quick details. We'll post the recording and attendee list on the Low Carbon Transportation Incentives webpage in about 2 weeks, and we'll email meeting registrants when that information is available. Staff will also share the link to the webpage in the chat. Today's materials, including the agenda and slides, are also on that page. To ask questions during the Q&A sessions, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom or press #2 on your phone. You can also email us at any point at cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. We'll be keeping an eye on that inbox. Staff will drop the email address in the chat. If there are any disruptions, we might need to reschedule the meeting. Please ensure your name is visible on Zoom or adjust your phone number to the last 4 digits if you're calling in. Now let's move on to the next slide to look at today's agenda. We just covered the welcome and housekeeping portion of our agenda. Next, I'll provide an introduction about the Clean Transportation Incentives Funding Plan and a high-level overview of the individual and community mobility incentive projects to situate the projects we are going to talk about today in the broader context of our suite of projects before we get into the details of specific incentive projects. We'll then provide an overview and updates on the light-duty vehicle purchase incentive projects and move into a discussion of potential policy changes for this year's funding plan. Then we'll take a short 5-minute break, followed by an overview of our long-term plan effort. Finally, we'll cap it off with a preliminary vehicle affordability analysis by the Center for Sustainable Energy, and then finish up with an open comment and Q&A session. Lastly, we'll wrap up with a summary and next steps. Next slide, please. In this next section, I'll cover a bit about us, the California Air Resources Board, also known as CARB, and our incentive programs, as well as what the funding plan is. Then I'll go over our investment programs and the policy drivers and guiding documents for the funding plan. Next slide, please. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, is part of a three-tiered system for improving air quality. This is comprised of the federal government through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or U.S. EPA, CARB at the state level, and regional air quality agencies. In general, the U.S. EPA has authority over interstate sources such as trains, airplanes, and ocean-going vessels. CARB has authority over mobile sources such as vehicles and equipment that are in or enter California. The regional air quality agencies have authority over local stationary sources such as refineries, automotive shops, and gas stations. CARB sets California's own health-based air quality standards statewide for vehicles, fuels, consumer products, and sources of toxic air contaminants. It is the only state permitted under the Federal Clean Air Act to set its own requirements for motor vehicles. CARB also sets significant goals and develops and implements programs to address greenhouse gas emissions. California needs significant reductions in oxides of nitrogen, or NOx, in order to support our state implementation plan to meet federal regulations. In this regard, CARB is especially focused on significant reductions in emissions from light-duty vehicles, as well as medium and heavy-duty on- and off-road vehicles and equipment. This includes reducing vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. Next slide, please. The Clean Transportation Incentives Funding Plan is an annual detailed guide for how CARB will allocate or assign any funds appropriated or designated to it by the legislature annually through the state budget. Through the plan, CARB staff aim to meet CARB and California state goals to improve air quality and reduce the negative impacts of climate change. CARB staff also aim to meet community and business needs. Where any funding appropriations allow for CARB to allocate funds to different incentive projects, that's where we collaborate with you and other interested parties on how these funds should be allocated. Lastly, the plan is a way for us to refine and improve how the projects work. For example, last year, one policy change was to direct last year's Clean Off-Road Equipment Project's limited funds only to small businesses and public agencies because many of them struggle to have the funds needed to be able to purchase this type of equipment. Next slide, please. This slide shows the funding plan development timeline, which aligns with the state budget development timeline. Our June kickoff workshop on June 17th began the official process for us to collaborate to develop the funding plan, with mid-June to mid-August being our main time to do that, as well as the formal 30-day public review and comment period from about mid-October to about mid-November to review the proposed plan before the board meeting. We'll hold a second workshop around mid-August to discuss the draft ideas we've developed in collaboration with you and other interested parties. We also hold work groups, which are more focused discussions on specific projects or sets of projects. That's where you are today. In December, we begin to implement the changes approved by the board into the various incentive projects. We also use this December evening community meeting to reflect on how the development process went so we can improve it for the following year. I'd like to point out that while this process may look smooth, it's anything but. We're constrained by the June 15th legislative budget deadline, and we may receive trailer budget bills toward the end of the legislative session, such as for our greenhouse gas reduction fund, which further constrain us. This year, since it's an odd-numbered year, the legislative session ends on September 12th. Rather than push our process out further, we stick to our timeline to get the dollars out the door quickly to program administrators, so we can spend the incentive funds quickly and get them to the people and businesses that need them. Otherwise, we risk the possibility of the legislature pulling back the funds. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned previously, the plan is a way for us to refine and improve how the incentive projects work. I mentioned before that one policy change was to adjust CORE, or the Clean Off-Road Equipment Project, to direct funding towards small businesses and public agencies who are most often in need of support for purchasing these types of equipment. To provide another example, for the Driving Clean Assistance Program, we increased the loan cap amount from $30,000 to $45,000 for financing assistance because we heard from community members and organizations that people needed a higher loan amount to be able to purchase the types of vehicles they need and want. Next slide, please. Funding plan for clean transportation incentives covers projects under the Air Quality Improvement Program and the Low Carbon Transportation Program. The Air Quality Improvement Program, or AQIP, was created in 2007 and has served as the foundation for the Low Carbon Transportation Program. AQIP is funded by smog abatement and vehicle registration fees that are deposited into the Air Pollution Control Fund, or APCF. This program focuses on zero-emission heavy-duty projects that reduce criteria pollutants and air toxics. The Low Carbon Transportation Program is part of the California Climate Investments. California Climate Investments is funded by proceeds from the sale of state-owned allowances from quarterly cap-and-trade auctions that are deposited into the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. This program has also received funding from the General Fund and other one-time funding sources, and together these investments support CARB's advanced technology, clean transportation incentive projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions in priority populations. It's not only funding sources that drive how we develop our funding plan. We also look to support the strategies and follow the guidance outlined in numerous other documents, such as the Senate Bill 350 Low-Income Barriers Study, the Mobile Source Strategy, and the Senate Bill 150 report. Additionally, the funding plan supports executive orders and legislative mandates, such as the governor's executive orders on zero-emission technologies and equity, and the California Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act. We also refer to strategy documents such as the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, or CAPT, which builds on executive orders targeted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in transportation. That was a lot of technical information, so we'll next pause to see if anyone has questions or comments on what was just shared. I'll turn it over to my colleague to facilitate Q&A.
Good morning, folks. My name is Robert Chester, staff here at CARB. I will be facilitating comments and questions this morning. We're now going to open the floor for everyone. If you have questions or comments on the material that we've covered thus far in the presentation. If you would like to make a verbal comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. For those using Zoom online, please click on the Raise Hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under the Participants tab. If you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the Raise Hand option in the More tab. Again, if you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you accordingly. If you would like to provide a written comment, please either email us at cleantransportation@arb.ca.gov, which is shown on the slide as you see here. All right. I'm not seeing any hands yet. Do we have any emails?
No emails yet.
Thank you, Sean. Well, we will have several other opportunities for folks to make comments or ask questions, so I think we can proceed for now.
Thank you, Robert. All right, so we'll now continue with our presentation, and up next is discussing the individual and mobility incentive projects. So moving into these incentive projects, we are going to begin with an overview of our individual and community mobility projects. These terms might sound different to some of you who have been here before. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we also refer to the individual incentive projects as light-duty vehicle purchase incentive projects. For the community mobility incentive projects, we also refer to those as the sustainable community-based transportation equity incentive projects. Today's work group is just about the light-duty vehicle purchase incentive projects, but it's helpful to understand how these projects and programs work together. Next slide, please. Our individual and community mobility incentives help CARB make progress on our institutional goals and help aid California communities. Overall, these investments strive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and criteria pollutants to improve air quality and public health, to create an environment that accelerates zero-emission vehicle deployment to transform the state's fleet to clean vehicles, to prioritize funding projects within priority population areas to address socioeconomic disparities, in particular through funding community-identified solutions that help improve access to key destinations and increase the number of mobility options available to communities. And lastly, these investments strive to alleviate environmental harms that are disproportionately felt by some communities due to historical inequities. State-level directives, including Assembly Bill 617, Senate Bill 375, and Senate Bill 350, are a few of the drivers behind these goals as they focus on improvements to environmental health. As an agency, CARB incorporates the equity principles of these directives into the fabric and design of every project and program. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to provide a quick overview of the individual and community mobility incentive offerings. These projects, which include both vehicle purchase incentives and clean mobility investments, aim to improve the accessibility of clean transportation to communities throughout the state and facilitate the transition to more sustainable modes. Because environmental harms are felt inequitably across the state, these programs are intended to tailor investments to best meet the needs of different individuals and communities. First, on the left, we have the light-duty vehicle purchase incentives. These projects focus on supporting individuals and households with the purchase of zero-emission vehicles. On the slide is a high-level description of what each project is designed to do. To ensure we're meeting communities where they are, the programs use a variety of methods to distribute incentives, which include needs-based models, application prioritization, technical assistance, and more. The projects in this portfolio include the Clean Cars for All programs, Driving Clean Assistance Program, California E-Bike Incentive Project, Access Clean California, Zero-Emission Assurance Project, and the California Integrated Travel Project. On the right, we have the Clean Mobility Incentives, which aim to address the transportation needs of Californians living in disadvantaged and low-income communities, and were developed with comprehensive community input and feedback. These projects provide funding to plan for and implement a variety of clean mobility solutions that can help folks get around without owning a personal car. The projects in this portfolio include statewide clean mobility options vouchers, regional clean mobility pilots, planning and capacity building grants, clean mobility in schools grants, and the Sustainable Transportation Equity Project grants. Next slide. So like I said, today's work group is focused on the light-duty vehicle purchase incentive projects, which include the Zero-Emission Assurance Project, California Integrated Travel Project, Access Clean California, California E-Bike Incentive Project, Clean Cars for All programs, and the Driving Clean Assistance Program. Next slide. This figure illustrates just the light-duty vehicle purchase incentive projects from the slide you just saw a moment ago. This year, there's currently $0 allocated in the fiscal year 2025-26 budget. In the following slides, we'll be providing updates on each of the projects. I'll provide a quick refresher on what these projects are, starting with the Zero-Emission Assurance Project, or ZAP, and moving clockwise. First, the Zero-Emission Assurance Project, or ZAP, offers incentives for battery or fuel cell replacements to reduce the risk of buying a used zero-emission vehicle. Cal-ITP, or the California Integrated Travel Project, helps support the implementation of contactless payment systems to make riding transit easier. Access Clean California is an outreach project focused on increasing awareness of the full suite of clean transportation equity incentives. The California E-Bike Incentive Project offers individuals payment assistance for the purchase of an electric bicycle. Clean Cars for All is run by the 5 major air districts and also provides a scrap and replace incentive in those districts' territories. Finally, the Driving Clean Assistance Program is a statewide program that helps individuals replace older vehicles with a clean vehicle and offers financial support by way of a vehicle grant or a low-interest loan. The first project we'll update you on is the Zero-Emission Assurance Project, so I'll now pass it over to my colleague Bianca.
Hello, everyone. ZAP was established to help lower-income Californians reduce the risk of buying a used zero-emission ZEV, or near zero-emission vehicle, also known as a plug-in hybrid, by providing a rebate or vehicle service contract for the replacement battery or fuel cell components. Repair costs are a significant barrier to entry for lower-income Californians. ZAP complements CARB's light-duty vehicle purchase incentive programs, such as Clean Cars for All and DCAP, by helping to alleviate low-income residents' concerns about premature battery degradation, resulting in reduced vehicle performance, vehicle depreciation, and costly repairs. In our last 2 public work groups, CARB staff discussed eligibility, policy, and proposed implementation for ZAP. Staff plans to hold one last public work group on July 17th to discuss launch specifics with a hope of launching the program by the end of the summer. $9.9 million was allocated in 2002, and no new funding has been allocated this year. Next up is the California Integrated Travel Project. I'll pass it over to Ali.
Good morning. My name is Ali Koustani, and I'm the CARB project lead for Cal-ITP. Since 2022, CARB has engaged the California Integrated Travel Project, or Cal-ITP, to provide targeted payments and data innovation support related to the equitable mobility incentive programs. Cal-ITP is a joint project between Caltrans, California's Department of Transportation, and the California State Transportation Agency, or CalSTA. Cal-ITP focuses on challenging policy and technology issues at the intersection of sustainable transportation and payments. CARB and Cal-ITP conducted research about the adoption of contactless payments at EV charger across California to help CARB's regulatory team develop legal requirements for payment acceptance technologies. As a follow-up, Cal-ITP helped structure and deploy a pilot program to utilize contactless payments using prepaid debit cards to distribute charging subsidy funds in partnership with ValleyCan. This research project helped validate bank cards as an innovative, user-friendly, and efficient vehicle for distribution of CARB's funds, and sparked the ongoing collaboration between our teams. Some of the other projects and deliverables under this contract are contactless Euro payment, MasterCard and Visa payment, CEMV, advisory for EV charging infrastructure, cashback rewards exploration, multiple pairs bank cards in the mobility sector, path to inclusion exploration, CC4A prepaid card procurement, payments transparency research at EV chargers, and eligibility verification improvements. Next up is Access Clean California. I'm passing it to Catherine.
Hi, it's me again. So Access Clean California helps streamline access and coordinate outreach for clean transportation incentives in priority communities, with the goal to spread the word about CARB's vehicle purchase incentives to those who need it most. About $22 million has been allocated to the program to date. Grid Alternatives, the program administrator, organizes a statewide network of 31 outreach partners and counting, an application support web tool called the Benefits Finder, a case management team that helps individuals get their incentive applications in, and a technical assistance and capacity building pilot program dedicated to bringing more nonprofit and community-based organizations into the fold to support communities in learning about and receiving clean transportation incentives. The Access Clean California team has recently grown their outreach network and the capacity of their case management team to respond better to needs on the ground. No policy changes are proposed for this year. Next, I'll pass it over to Sean to speak on the California e-bike incentive project.
Good morning, everyone. The California e-bike incentive project aims to provide electric bicycle or e-bike incentives to low-income California residents of 18 years or older. The project goals include reducing greenhouse gas emissions, vehicle miles traveled, and providing access to clean transportation options for residents who need it the most. To date, over $2 million has been awarded for e-bike incentives, and there's no funding allocated in this year's budget for the project. Staff are monitoring the effects of tariffs on e-bike prices. Staff will consider altering the incentive structure in the event the tariffs present significant barriers for low-income households to purchase an e-bike with the current incentive amounts. Staff may hold a public work group to solicit feedback for a potential policy change to the incentive structure later this year. Now I'll pass it to Tiffany, who will provide an overview of the Driving Clean Assistance Program.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everyone. The Driving Clean Assistance Program expands access to Clean Cars for All incentives up to $12,500 towards the purchase or lease of a zero-emission vehicle outside of the 5 largest air districts to areas of the state that do not have access to a regional Clean Cars for All program. It also connects participants to a capped interest rate loan of 8% and provides incentives towards charging solutions. DCAP is designed to be a complementary option to regional Clean Cars for All by providing a pathway for non-scrap incentives. By enabling both a scrap and non-scrap option, consumers would be able to literally build their incentive, creating flexibility best suited for them and their needs. DCAP is currently available to all regions of the state and is currently accepting applications for non-scrap options to participants living in regional Clean Cars for All regions. In addition to providing non-scrap incentives, it also uses the needs-based model, which enables consistent and continuous access to incentives regardless of geography. Next slide, please. Thank you. And with that, we will provide a status update for DCAP. DCAP is administered by Community Housing Development Corporation, otherwise known as CHDC, and provides access to clean and zero-emission vehicles through providing access to Clean Cars for All incentives outside of a regional Clean Cars for All program, which is currently administered by the 5 largest air districts. And it also connects participants to fair financing. To date, around $241 million have been allocated to DCAP. DCAP has been accepting applications from Imperial Valley residents beginning September 2024 and has been open to the rest of the state, following a monthly staggered rollout in order to provide equitable access to incentives. As such, as of March 25, 2025, DCAP is now available to regional Clean Cars for All regions for non-scrap options. Since the project opened statewide in September 2024, 143 projects have been funded, but over 16,000 applications representing over $196 million in demand have been received and are in progress of redeeming services. As part of the DCAP application process, there is financial counseling that is conducted with participants that can potentially take up to 3 months to complete. There are no new allocations for DCAP, but staff is exploring different ways to align program requirements and eligibility criteria to regional Clean Cars for All programs. Next, Olivia will provide an overview of the Clean Cars for All program.
The Regional Clean Cars for All program is a scrap and replace program that provides incentives to low-income consumers as they replace their higher polluting vehicles with cleaner transportation. Participants receive as much as $12,000 towards the purchase or lease of a new or used plug-in hybrid electric vehicle or zero-emission vehicle or motorcycle. Alternative mobility options such as e-bikes or transit passes are also available. The program is currently administered in the 5 largest air districts in California: South Coast, San Joaquin Valley, Bay Area, Sacramento Metropolitan, and San Diego. No funding has been allocated through the funding plan this year, but other funding was recently made available through Carl Moyer's State Reserve co-funding and Assembly Budget Bill 100. $357.5 million has been previously allocated to the regional programs, and over 26,000 vehicles have been replaced to date. This year, staff is focusing on program alignment. Next slide. Okay, so at this time, we will discuss proposed policy changes for CARB's light-duty incentive programs. The discussion will center around program alignment. So stakeholders have been telling CARB that we need to focus more on creating simplicity and reducing barriers to participate in CARB's light-duty incentive programs. In addition to these comments, stakeholders have also conveyed that CARB should not only focus on the vehicle purchase incentive, but rather focus on the entire process, including supporting vehicle loans and potential battery warranty issues after electric vehicle adoption. We are also hearing that the policies that we set must remain flexible and that equity should be the focus when we are developing and implementing them. DCAP was designed to address some of these concerns. Through implementation and feedback heard from Regional Clean Cars for All administrators, CHDC, which is the administrator for DCAP, and other stakeholders, it was determined that alignment of program criteria would be essential to reducing confusion and to help ensure that those who participate in CARB's light-duty incentive programs are successful throughout the process and are able to maintain the new vehicle long-term. Alignment allows CARB to take these vehicle incentive programs to the next level, encapsulating not just monetary incentives, but support and help in rebuilding credit, empowering participants, and providing support through the entire vehicle buying process. Although DCAP also offers a Clean Cars for All incentive, implementation is significantly different from the regional Clean Cars for All programs, as it is piloting the first of its kind needs-based model. Regional Clean Cars for All currently utilizes a first-come, first-served model. So moving forward, we hope to use lessons learned to further program alignment while remaining flexible. There will always be room for special cases and outliers. We know that this won't be a one-size-fits-all, but by bringing alignment where appropriate, we will create resiliency and stability as we weather an unpredictable market and funding allocations. So this work is not just beginning. CARB staff has been working on alignment through collaboration meetings where all program administrators are present. We have also hosted symposium events with breakout conversations and hosted space where ideas and concerns could be shared. We also have over 10 years of data and lessons learned from years of implementing Clean Cars for All, the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project, and other light-duty incentive programs. We are using this experience to inform our alignment proposals. The next step is to formalize these guidelines and implement necessary changes to achieve a more equitable and aligned suite of incentive programs. CARB staff have identified 6 potential policy updates that will be critical towards addressing previously mentioned participant feedback and public comments. These policies include aligned eligibility requirements, such as aligning on how programs verify income and household size. This will create a clearer and more streamlined application process. We also want to explore an agreed upon model year cutoff for the vehicles that will be scrapped, as well as standardized program closure procedures to ensure the programs are more equitable and that incentives are going to those who need it most. And lastly, a singular approved dealership list and purchase price cap will expand consumer protection and further align the programs. These policies have been identified as building blocks in providing equitable solutions towards the adoption of electric vehicles and will reinforce consumer protections, transparency during the application process, and maintain access to communities and individuals who need it the most. I will now pass it over to Tiffany to provide some more detail on these policy ideas.
All right, thank you, Olivia. Excuse me. Getting into a little bit more detail now, CARB staff aims to implement 2 previously board-approved eligibility guidelines. To ensure funding gets to those who need it the most, our light-duty incentive programs have various eligibility criteria, but often do not align on how they verify these requirements. To verify income, all light-duty vehicle incentive programs should use line 9, otherwise known as the gross income line on the 1040 tax form. There should also be clear methods for those that cannot provide tax statements. For example, it could include a full review of pay stubs depending on what the district has designated as their procedure. To verify household size, all light-duty vehicle incentive programs should count the individual, spouse, and anyone claimed as dependent on taxes. Next slide, thank you. CARB staff proposed alignment that addresses 2 additional eligibility requirements, then 2 more that address implementation issues that have been brought up as challenges for applicants. Staff proposed that all programs use a consistent model year cutoff for scrap vehicles. To participate in Clean Cars for All, participants must scrap an older vehicle. Currently, the different administrators differ on requirements for how old the vehicle must be, ranging from 2006 or older to 2010 or older. In deciding on a standardized year cutoff, the program requires that we target the highest emitting vehicles, but also remain equitable in all areas of the state. One proposal is to set the cutoff at vehicles that are 15 years or older, which currently translates to vehicles that are 2010 model year or older. Historically, the average for a scrap vehicle in the program is a model year of 2001 or older, so perhaps we can go further or prioritize the oldest vehicles through consistent thresholds. Staff proposed that a consistent purchase price cap be set for when participants are using their incentives to buy their cleaner vehicle. One proposal is to set the cap at $45,000, or we can also explore thresholds. As for implementation proposals, as previously stated, CARB staff sees that all could benefit from an aligned approved dealer list and program closure procedures. One proposal is to create one statewide approved dealer list. We also believe that participants would benefit from clear definitions surrounding how program closure happens. Currently, each program handles this differently. So we have just shared a lot of information, so now we have time for Q&A. So I'll go ahead and pass it on over to Robert to facilitate.
Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, folks. If you would like to make a verbal comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. For those using Zoom online, please click on the Raise Hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under the Participants tab. If you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the Raise Hand option in the More tab. Again, if you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you accordingly. And if you would like to submit a written comment or question, please email us at cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. Okay, I see one hand for now. Please, when I unmute you, introduce yourself by name and identify any affiliation that you have. Kai Clausen, I am unmuting you. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much for your time today. I work in environmental and energy consulting. I have a question regarding the amount of applications and the projected demand that will cause. So I know that you guys listed 16,000 applications in your queue and you projected 196 million in demand. My question is what the percentage of those applications that actually utilize the demand. So it's not a 1-for-1. Could we get some clarity on how many of those applications actually come to fruition?
Hello, just so that I understand the question, just so that way we can repeat it for the record. So your question is, do we have any data that currently supports like what demand really looks like? And there are more questions surrounding that 16,000 number, as well as that $196 million kind of projected demand. Am I capturing the essence of your question correctly?
Yeah, so I'm wondering how you got that number and if it's just a 1-for-1, like 16,000 applications directly equate to 196 million, or are you estimating based off of a formula of the amount of applications that are actually going to get approved? Because, I think when it comes to the applications, not everyone's going to qualify, right?
Correct. I mean, right now, it's one of the things that we are tracking is demand. We are also ensuring that folks who really need it the most and those who need, and we at this point, and one of the things I want to emphasize too is folks may or may not need certain kinds of incentive, right? When they enter DCAP, a lot of times some of the comments that we do receive is what incentives am I qualified for? There's a lot of navigation that happened, and so we do ensure that the maximum amount is allocated at this point. But that can happen. Things do happen with individuals. They might find that they might have self-financing. They might have other alternative options. So we do try to ensure that those who need it the most have access to those incentives. So I know that it's a long-winded answer, as right now, essentially it is just we are making sure that the amount that is needed and is appropriate for the individual is allocated to that individual.
Right. I understand what you're saying when it comes to, folks have varying needs and whatnot, but I guess my question is that 16,000 that you've estimated is going to be utilizing 196? Is that all based off all 16,000 getting the max amount?
Well, those are statistics from an earlier amount. I believe the current amount in queue is over 20,000 right now. So
right, I'm talking about that 16,000 that you're quoting in the 196, just where you got that number.
Those numbers come from quarterly reports. We do meet regularly with our administrator, things like that. Like I said, these numbers come regularly. We can update where needed, but we do anticipate a dashboard coming up soon. I do not currently have a timeline as of right now for that dashboard, but I do encourage folks that if you do have questions to please reach out to one of us on the team, myself, and we can help see where we can provide clarity at.
Thank you for your question, Kai. Moving on to Lydia. I'm unmuting you. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lydia. I'm with Sac Metro Air District. I have a question on the statewide approved dealer list that you mentioned was a proposal by the team. I would love if you could talk more about the benefits that you would see with that. I have some questions on that since here at Sac Metro, we have a very close relationship with the dealers on our unique approved list. And so I would wonder kind of what the maintenance of a statewide approved dealer list would look like. I'd love if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I can take this one, and Olivia, please feel free to jump in as well. So we are looking at different ways to do this. One of the things that we are very conscious of is ensuring that the relationships that have been cultivated between administrators and their dealerships remain intact. So perhaps, and this is where I'm kind of looking to our program administrators. What are some of the things that we like to see? One of the things that we frequently get, at least at the CARB level, is how come I cannot go to a certain dealership in San Francisco when I am a participant up in the Sacramento Metropolitan Air District program? And so there creates a clash of terms and conditions, a lot of confusion between our participants. And so this, again, it's a proposal. I do want to highlight that this is a time for our program administrators as well as our stakeholders to weigh in and to really help shape how we want to approach this idea. Again, these are all proposals. We are currently taking feedback. Again, please feel free to contact myself, Olivia, the Clean Transportation Incentive Team, and we can discuss that from there. But essentially, all options are on the table, but I am very conscious of and understand, again, to Olivia's point earlier, that there's over 10 years worth of experience in these regional Clean Cars for All programs, and we do want to preserve those relationships as well. So I know it was a very long-winded answer, but again, it's a proposal for now. We do want to hear feedback as to how we want to shape this alignment across dealerships. So I hope that answers your question, Lydia.
Sure, yeah. It sounds like it's still in the works.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Lydia. Now going to Deanna Yee. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Deanna from the Bay Area Air District. So I wanted to comment specifically on program alignment related to Clean Cars for All and the model year that was mentioned for 15 years or older, and also the 45,000 price cap. So for our program, we have different requirements that we cater to our specific region based on a variety of needs. So for model year in particular, we have 2007 and older. And some of the reasons for that is we focus on older, higher emitting vehicles. It's also a way that we control for demand for our program, which is already oversubscribed. So increasing to 2010 would create a huge influx of applications for residents in the Bay Area that haven't previously been eligible for the program, potentially creating a lot of issues with demand if we were to relaunch with 2010 and older. And for the 45,000 price cap, I am curious where this number is coming from. I know that's DCAP's current threshold for their program, but we have a lot of existing Clean Cars for All programs that have been around for many, many years, and a lot of us have higher price caps. I'm not sure if every program has a price cap, but our price cap is currently 48,000. That's based off of thousands of data points for vehicles purchased through our program, the types of makes and models that are purchased, particularly Tesla. I know that can be a controversial make in terms of optics, but it is one of the most popular makes that are purchased through our program, and they do hover around the $48,000 amount, which is one of the reasons why we have that price cap. So if we were to decrease that to 45,000, that would create a lot of barriers for access for one of the most popular vehicles for our program. And also, just due to inflation, rising cost of vehicles, cost of living, the cost of vehicles continues to increase. So if we were to decrease that price cap, again, it would just create barriers where we're already seeing a demand for an increase for our price cap to be even higher than 48,000.
Those are all,
Go ahead, Olivia.
I was just going to say those are all really great comments, and we'll take those all into consideration. Do you have anything else you want to add, Tiffany, or do you have any further information on where the 45,000 number came from for DCAP?
Yeah, so the 45,000 came from the CSC vehicle affordability analysis. We are very conscious of making sure that folks do not get themselves into a loan and or a vehicle that they could not afford. And so based on their analyses, 45,000 was the number that was recommended. And I do want to emphasize that these are all just proposals. Again, I just want to really reiterate this, that Deanna, you bring up a lot of really good points. These are things that we're taking very seriously, and we're going to take it back and discuss internally. And then where appropriate, if we do need to workshop it, we will. But again, these are all the times that we can take to be open to have this feedback to help shape these upcoming program alignment policies. And so I definitely do invite you all to kind of just submit comments, things like that. And we can continue that conversation. But yes, we are very open to feedback on these limits if we feel that the need, especially with stakeholder comment and demand, and if there's additional factors that we have to account for, so things like tariffs, prices going up, we may look to see to even increase that that vehicle price cap as well.
Thanks, Tiffany and Olivia, and thank you for your comment and questions, Deanna. Okay, next in the queue, we have Carrie Todd. I'm unmuting you. Please go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. This is Carrie with the San Joaquin Valley Air District. Definitely appreciate this work group and all the work that's been put into this. And I'm particularly just providing some comments on the program alignment for CC4A, the area in the presentation. I think that we can certainly appreciate where we've arrived from previous work groups on the income verification and just kind of, arriving at a definition of household that I think we can all generally agree on. I'm so happy to see that. I know there had been some discussions and kind of back and forth on income in particular. So I appreciate what you guys have done there, what you're proposing there. In general, we support program alignment where feasible and practical. I think from our perspective, we just want to make sure that the program alignment doesn't result in significant additional administrative work, and that kind of through this process the requirements are clear to program administrators and participants. So I think for us that's really our biggest priority, is just making sure it's clear and that we're not adding substantial kind of significant burden there on the administration side. As far as the model year, I think you guys have already addressed this, and there's been, I think, some comments in the presentation and a couple comments made after, but it sounds like this is kind of an evolving discussion and that there's certainly opportunity to continue to talk about model year. I think in general, ultimately we're open to that if CARB decides or kind of chooses to go a certain path. I'm happy to hear that it sounds like there's still some flexibility there where we could still consider oldest as priority. Similar to what Deanna had mentioned, we're 06 and older, and we really have no shortage of applications, even in that older model year range. So it sounds like this is, just kind of evolving and opportunities to still discuss, but I'm definitely open to continuing those conversations. Our program, as far as price cap, we don't currently have a price cap. And so I think some of our questions, number one, we do like the idea of the price cap. So I think that that's something that kind of just even internally, that's something that we've been considering adding into our implementation plan. So, just more curious on the questions of how this is defined, kind of what costs are included. Is there a difference between new versus used, or cars versus trucks / SUVs? But once again, just, kind of making sure it's clear and as simple as possible for us to verify and for dealers to also verify. So definitely interested in kind of that ongoing conversation. And then as far as the statewide dealer list concept, we do like that idea. So, it's something else we're interested in continuing to discuss and provide input on. I think we just more have questions on who would be responsible for managing the dealers, signing them up, kind of dealership oversight. But in general, I didn't really have any specific questions, just those comments I kind of wanted to throw out there and kind of questions for future thought. And it sounds like additional discussions that will be had down the road. So certainly appreciate the time and opportunity to provide some comments and look forward to continuing to work together to achieve program alignment.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate those comments. In the interest of time, we are going to call on the next two in the queue who had their hands raised. Divine, we will get you in the next section. Apologies, but we do have a schedule to stay on, and we will also address questions and comments that are coming in through email later on in the workshop as well, in the interest of time. So this goes for all presenters and those who are making comments or asking questions. For the sake of the interpreters, could you please slow your pace if at all possible, so that we make sure that the interpreters can translate for those online. Thank you. Okay, next in the queue, Bill Boyce. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, Bill Boyce, representing the California Electric Transportation Coalition today. Yeah, I had questions on kind of the Clean Cars for All funding. Kind of went through that really quick. The allocation was $357.5 million to date. Did not sound like there was any new funding, but you mentioned two other new sources, Carl Moyer and it sounded like a Senate bill funding. Do you have some amounts for those two new funding sources, what that is, and kind of what's the working budget for Clean Cars for All with how much money's left over from the previous allocations?
Yeah, I can take that one, Robert. So right now, as a whole, the Regional Clean Cars for All program has about $58.4 million in remaining funding. And that 357 number that I cited, that was historical allocations to date. And so the new funding, no new funding has been proposed through the funding plan this year for Regional Clean Cars for All. But we did do some work earlier this year to find additional funding, and Assembly Bill 100 allocated an additional $19.8 million to the Regional Clean Cars for All programs that were experiencing high demand. So we allocated those funds to San Joaquin and Bay Area for the Clean Cars for All program. So 11.6 million went to San Joaquin and 7.1 go to Bay Area. And we are currently working on encumbering those funds through grant amendments. And then additionally, 10.4 million of Carl Moyer State Reserve funds were awarded to the air districts who administer Clean Cars for All programs, and the solicitation directed them to prioritize those funds towards Clean Cars for All incentives. So they can use up to $3,000 of those funds per applicant to co-fund with Clean Cars for All funding. So it just makes the dollars go further if they can co-fund with the Carl Moyer State Reserve funds. And if I could give more detail on that breakdown for what district got what. But yeah, so those two funding sources will be helping us to kind of fill in the gaps this year. But yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Livia.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to Chris Chavez. Let's see here. Go ahead and try to unmute yourself.
Sure. This is Chris Chavez, Deputy Policy Director, Coalition for Clean Air. Just first of all, thank you for this presentation and the information. I understand, the state budget process is still ongoing as it relates to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and cap and trade. However, just wanted to emphasize the support for more funding for the regional programs. It is disappointing to see currently no new funding is being proposed currently. And as we've seen already at some of the air districts, funding has run out. We saw San Joaquin, we saw Bay Area run out of funding. And I think important things to clarify in the previous discussion is that some districts are in different positions in terms of their funding, how much funding is available to them. So you really want to just emphasize the need to support these programs, the community partnerships that have been built around these programs, and do everything CARB can to make sure that these programs can continue serving the populations that they serve, which represents about 85% of the disadvantaged communities in California. So just want to again express our support for the regional programs and additional funding for those programs as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate all the comments and questions that folks have provided thus far. I want to remind people that we will have additional opportunities for more discussion on these items. But at this time, we need to take a break. And so let's take a break for 5 minutes. So let's say 10:07, since we've already kind of eaten into 1 minute. So 10:07, we'll see you back at 10:07. Thanks.
Welcome back, everyone. Now we are going to move into giving a brief insight into the long-term strategy for individual and community mobility incentive projects. The long-term strategy for light-duty vehicles and clean mobility projects serves as CARB's long-term investment strategy for clean transportation incentives funding for both light-duty vehicle purchase incentives and mobility projects. This strategy serves as a roadmap showing how state incentives can help sustain and grow the light-duty zero-emission vehicle market in California and provide solutions at the community level for clean transportation options. It identifies key priority areas for investment and outlines an estimated 3-year funding need for these programs. The long-term strategy includes several key elements. An update on California's light-duty zero-emission vehicle market, including a trajectory analysis to reaching 2030 ZEV goals. A further discussion of achieving a sustainable light-duty zero-emission vehicle technology and market, including vehicle choice diversity, consumer awareness, and the impact of federal policies. A light-duty vehicle affordability analysis given the current incentive landscape. Analysis of 3-year funding need for CARB's light-duty vehicle and clean mobility projects. A discussion of staff's longer-term vision for these projects. And lastly, serves as the annual supplemental report required by the 2018-2019 Budget Act. To give some context for how and why this strategy is developed and updated each year, I will quickly go through the legislative background that created it. Senate Bill 1275 originally directed CARB to develop a long-term strategy for light-duty vehicle and mobility investments. Since fiscal year 2016-2017, CARB staff have updated funding need forecasts annually through each funding plan, with major strategy updates occurring every 3 years. Although the legislative mandate under SB 1275 has since sunset, CARB staff will continue to provide annual updates. This year's update is a major revision that will cover the period from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028. In addition, the supplemental report for the 2018-2019 Budget Act requires CARB to annually update its incentive funding forecast through January 1 of 2030. This includes estimating the total state rebate investment needed to help place at least 5 million ZEVs on the road by 2030, projecting EV sales, and evaluating automakers' EV marketing efforts. This update will also include a separate but related effort to update the long-term strategy for clean mobility equity investments. This slide highlights some of the key market deployment strategy goals driving California's zero-emission vehicle strategy. We've already hit a major milestone with over 1 million ZEVs deployed by 2023, and we have exceeded the goal of 1.5 million by 2025. The state also has set a goal of 5 million ZEVs on the road by 2030. Beyond deployment numbers, policy goals continue to evolve. One of the most significant targets is that by 2035, all new vehicles sold in California are to be electric. And by 2040, we aim for a full turnover of the fleet to electric vehicles. In order to reach these and other climate goals, it will be critical to increase EV adoption among priority populations across California. It is important that we keep these goals in mind as we progress through the update for the long-term plan and how we can best support them through incentives. The format of the long-term strategy will be similar to updates of the past, as there are key areas we are required to include. We will work on a 3-year funding forecast for our vehicle purchase incentive programs based on program demand in recent years and market indicators. Staff will be holding a separate public work group where they will get into the weeds of projections and will be seeking stakeholder input on forecasting methodologies. We will also provide updates on the incremental costs of plug-in electric vehicles and new and used ZEV market numbers in California as a measurement of where the market stands in comparison to ZEV deployment goals. Staff will then take a look at the status of ZEV technology and exciting vehicles on the horizon that will expand the function and use of EVs. Along with this will come a deeper dive into consumer preferences and a strong focus on ensuring an equitable transition to electric. Throughout the whole process, we will be examining recent and ongoing research and plan to highlight current research in our workshops. As we analyze the ZEV market and what's to come, we will use this information to assess how our vehicle purchase incentive programs could be modified based on changes in market conditions and a shift away from a focus on the mass market to a primary focus on priority populations. CARB will be kicking off a separate but coordinated effort to update the long-term strategy for our clean mobility investments. Before we dive into the vehicle affordability analysis, I'd like to start with a quick snapshot of California's zero-emission vehicle market. As of June 11th, 2025, over 2.2 million ZEVs have been sold in California, with battery electric vehicles making up nearly 76% of that total. ZEVs now represent 23% of all new vehicle sales in the state. On the infrastructure side, there are currently 178,549 public EV chargers and 68 hydrogen refueling stations available statewide. In terms of consumer choice, there are now 147 light-duty ZEV models on the market. And now I'll turn it over to John Anderson from the Center for Sustainable Energy, who will share their work on vehicle affordability analysis.
Thanks, Michaela. Share my screen here. All right, are the slides visible?
Yes.
Great, thank
Okay.
you very much. All right, I'm John Anderson. I am the Director of EV Programs Research at the Center for Sustainable Energy, and I'm going to present an update on our analysis of vehicle affordability relative to the incentives available in California for this year. Presenting on behalf of my colleague, Christian Cheja, who was instrumental in putting this analysis together. What we're going to be talking about for the next 15 minutes or so is this question: do the incentives available enable meaningful choice, meaningful affordable choice for consumers? We're going to walk through the calculations we used to do these analyses. We're going to look at some of those assumptions and talk about the drawbacks or shortcomings therein. We'll talk about the results, and then if there are questions, we can, of course, dive deeper into the assumptions and look into how the inputs and sensitivities affect our results. But first, let's start with a little background. So according to Kelley Blue Book, as of May 2025, the average cost of a new EV was just under $58,000, and the average cost of a used EV was just over $36,000. So about a $20,000 price gap between the new and the used EV prices on average. Putting that in the context of the broader auto market, average new vehicles, including internal combustion vehicles, average about $49,000, whereas the used vehicle listing price on average is about $25,470. So as you can see, there's quite a large difference in price between an average used vehicle and a new EV, to the tune of about $30,000. So there's a lot of ground to be made up between those used internal combustion engine vehicle prices and a new EV. We have seen that new vehicle prices have been relatively stable over the last year and into the summer of 2025. Used vehicle prices went on something of a wild ride during the pandemic and the shutdowns and supply chain constraints therein, and have risen slightly over the past year or so after coming down from their highs in about 2022. So I bring this all up to highlight that for incentivizing new EVs, we need to overcome both the price premium for the EV and this gap between used vehicle prices and new vehicle prices. So when we're talking about affordability, what do we mean by that exactly? So in this context, we're looking at total monthly operating costs, and we'll talk about what's contained within total monthly operating costs in a minute. We're assuming a 10% down payment and a 5-year loan. And we're looking to compare that to 15% of a household's monthly income. We do adjust this for household size to account for higher costs in larger households, particularly if multiple vehicles are needed for that household's need. And we factor that into this comparison between these total monthly operating costs and monthly income. In those total monthly operating costs, we're factoring in the finance costs. So that's the paying off the principal, including taxes and fees and things like that, as well as the interest. And we're assuming the operating costs include insurance, fuel costs, and other maintenance. In practice, and we're going to focus in this presentation on a 300%, a household earning 300% of the federal poverty level with 4 people in the household to align with the eligibility criteria for the Clean Cars for All programs and for the Driving Clean Assistance Program. That's in 2025, $96,450 annually. And that equates, that 15% affordability threshold equates to $603 per month on a vehicle. So that's our threshold that we're going to be evaluating against. As far as inputs to this analysis, we're using the 2025 model year from fueleconomy.gov for our new vehicles. Fueleconomy.gov separates the models into separate options, as we're calling them in this analysis, based on make, model, and trim, where that trim is related to the electric range of the vehicle. So this becomes relevant for vehicles with lots of configuration options that result in changes to the electric range. So that can inflate the number of options that are available in our analysis here. We're also going to present about models so that we can kind of ground that in model choices. We only included in our analysis new vehicles for which price information is available. There are some vehicles that have been tested and included in the fuel economy database that aren't available for sale yet and don't have price information. So those are excluded from this analysis. For used vehicles, we're looking at the 2022 and earlier model year. And again, where that vehicle is present in the fueleconomy.gov database. And in addition to make, model, and trim combinations, we're adding in model year as a differentiator of those options. And again, where price information is available. Our cost assumptions are these. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the slide so we can talk about some of the details here. For new vehicles, we're looking at MSRP information gathered from manufacturer websites or where not available from Car and Driver. We're also using Kelley Blue Book fair purchase prices without options for the used vehicles. Interest rates, our assumption is about 11% for both the new and used. These are national averages, assuming good credit. I think that's the 600 to 700 credit score range. We're assuming a $337 per month insurance premium, which equates to about $4,000 a year. On maintenance, we're assuming a $74 per month maintenance cost. That's a lifetime average for these vehicles. And this is one I want to highlight for the used vehicles, because as vehicles get older, the likelihood of needing a major repair goes up. So as we get further into a vehicle's life, there's a higher likelihood that maintenance costs will be higher and that the person who owns the car at the end of the life will have to absorb that cost, which could lead to higher maintenance costs for these used vehicles. So I want to highlight that as a limitation here. We're assuming $684 in fees. These are DMV fees from that average new EV cost that we talked about earlier. Used vehicle fees will be lower, but we assumed $684 across the board. We're assuming a 7.25% sales tax rate. That's the California average without any local or county taxes added in. And the same applies for use tax for used vehicles. We're taking the defaults from fueleconomy.gov for fuel costs. And again, we're doing that purchase power adjustment for larger households, which in practice is taking the square root of the household size and dividing the affordability number by that household adjustment. So that lowers that affordability threshold. What we're not accounting for in this presentation is the cost of installing charging infrastructure at home where applicable or possible. We're assuming that these households have the financial flexibility to make a cash down payment or at least sufficient trade value from other vehicles to cover that down payment. And again, that's 10% in our assumed scenarios here. And we're also assuming access to credit regardless of credit score. So I think we've touched on 2 points that tie into the importance of some of the features of our programs that we're talking about today. ZAP provides a good safeguard against those used vehicle maintenance costs that might be inflated, particularly for older vehicles, and the interest rate caps and loan loss reserves in the finance assistance programs provide higher likelihood of having access to credit, which is very helpful for making vehicles affordable. So let's talk about our results. So for new vehicles, story is a little bit bleak this year. Assuming, again, a 4-person household with 300% of the federal poverty level in income, $96,450, receiving a $9,500 incentive for a plug-in hybrid or a $10,000 incentive for a battery electric vehicle to align with the base Clean Cars for All incentive amounts. And assuming an 8% interest rate cap applied through finance assistance, there are no 2025 model year vehicles that are affordable given the assumptions that we just talked about. So in the new space, these incentives certainly help. They bring the cost down, they make the vehicles more accessible, but they don't bring us below that 15% threshold for 4-person households at 300% FPL. On the used side of things, even without incentives, we see that there are 8 choices available for a 4-person household at 300% of the federal poverty level, below that 15% of monthly income level. So that's across 5 models. All of them are small battery electric vehicles, and by small, we're including sedans, 2-seaters, hatchbacks, smaller vehicles. In our large category are pickup trucks, SUVs, and vans. If we add in the Clean Cars for All incentive, $9,500 or $10,000, as we talked about earlier, depending on the technology type, sorry, talking a little fast there, we add 65 options into the picture for that 3 or 4-person household at 300% FPL. So that's 73 total options across 21 models. We do get a couple of large vehicles entering the affordability picture. These are small SUVs. They're RAV4 EVs. And we'll talk a little bit later about how vehicle availability doesn't necessarily equate to affordability. But 3 larger battery electric vehicles, and we also bring 17 plug-in hybrids in the smaller vehicle sizes into the affordability picture with these incentives. Adding in the interest rate cap of 8% adds another 4 options, bringing us up to 22 models and 77 total options. And then adding $2,000 on for residents of disadvantaged communities adds another 15 options. So that brings us up to 88 choices across 23 models. So I mentioned earlier availability versus affordability. We saw earlier in the presentation that used EV prices are higher than conventional internal combustion engine prices in the used market. We're seeing in some analyses of our used vehicle data that the age of vehicles in the used EV market is quite a bit more recent than in the internal combustion engine market. That's going to lead to higher costs, right? We're also seeing that the used EV market is much smaller than the used internal combustion engine market, and indeed smaller than the new EV market. So though we're saying that there are nominally 88 options available to consumers at the 300% FPL level, there may not be 88 options available for purchase in the market, depending on supply and where people are and things of that nature. I think it's also worth highlighting that we talked a little bit about the lack of larger vehicles in this affordability picture. Though we're seeing pickup trucks enter the market, larger SUVs enter the market, because those vehicles are typically newer than other vehicles in the used market, it may take some time before the prices come down to the extent that they're affordable, even with these large incentives that are available to folks to take advantage of to make these vehicles affordable. So I wanted to highlight a couple of things there. This is the end of the slides here. We do have some, oh, I'm sorry, one more slide that we'll talk about here. We've heard in the past that vehicle make choices are important to different markets and different consumers. So wanted to show that across these vehicle choices enabled by the CC4A and finance assistance programs, there is quite a bit of diversity in the vehicle makes. A lot of the options are concentrated in Ford and Smart as brands that are available in the used market. But we do see some additional choices in Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes, Mitsubishi, and others. So worth highlighting that as well. And we have some additional slides that we can talk about the assumptions in more detail. If there are questions, I'm always happy to talk via email or otherwise if folks want to get in touch as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, we now have our final comment and question period. Thank you very much, John and Michaela, for your presentation. So I just want to clarify some things here. It's now 10:30. We will go till 11:20 if needed. And while we can address questions and comments on anything that has been presented thus far, because John and Michaela just presented, I would prefer to start with questions on their presentation and then loop back. Divine, haven't forgotten about you. Definitely want to make time after we address the questions on the most recent presentation. So, if you would like to make a verbal comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. For those using Zoom online, please click on the raise hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under the Participants tab. If you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the Raise Hand option in the More tab. Again, if you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you accordingly. If you would prefer to send us a written comment via email, please email us at cleantransportation.incentives@arb.ca.gov. Okay, the floor is now open. Does anybody have any comments or questions for John or Michaela on their presentations? Divine, I have unmuted you. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. Just a quick question back to Michaela's presentation. It's not a question, more so of an ask. We were talking Clean Cars for All alignment, the statewide program and the Air District grant programs. Is there like a cheat sheet that's created that shows kind of comparisons? We talked about the differences in MSRP caps. Maybe there's some differences in the age of vehicles. Is there like a spreadsheet that shows the difference between the statewide program and Bay Area or Sac Metro? Does something like that exist? I think it would be beneficial if we could just look across programs to see where there's misalignment as we're talking about alignment.
Hi, Divine. Thank you for that comment. I will say that that is a very great point to make out. We are working on that internally. I will say I do not have an estimated time of arrival for that document, but we will be taking your comment back and working on that graphic internally. And so we're hoping to get that published on our website. We're still trying to find a place for it to live on our website. So yeah, keep an eye out. Stay tuned on our website. That's all I could really say to that for right now. But thank you again for your comment. We are looking and we are getting that done internally.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, Tiffany, maybe we could add that to our next work group. Just maybe not, maybe like focused on our policy proposals. We could give like maybe a simplified version of what you guys are preparing. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you, Divine. Thanks, Tiffany and Olivia. Appreciate that. And then just a reminder, you will have additional opportunities in an upcoming workshop on some of this stuff. And please feel free to email us at cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. Okay, we do have some email questions and comments. One is from Sam Kilpatrick from Redwood Energy. It says, can you please provide an update on the e-bike solicitation? The e-bike solicitation is currently in development, and we will announce any updates as soon as we have them. Thank you for your question, Sam. Okay. Any other questions, comments for those on the call? Green Mars Wu, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much to staff for this presentation. I'm Mars Wu with the Green Lining Institute. I had a quick clarifying question about something that was mentioned earlier around, I believe it was $10.4 million of the Carl Moyer allocation being open to being used for Clean Cars for All. I wanted to just get more clarification around that. One question is, could you confirm kind of the final allocation for Carl Moyer that's in this year's deal? My understanding is that it's around 130 million, and then just one confirmation of that, and then also that the 10.4 million is within that 130 million and not on top of it.
Olivia, Aaron, I don't know if either of you want to respond to this.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead, Aaron. I was focused on the last question, so I didn't hear it. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just gonna say, in terms of the Carl Moyer money, that's money that Olivia, I think you can probably answer the question in terms of how much is there. But I think that what I wanted to say was that the money is available to be used for Clean Cars for All, but the districts still have there's some discretion there, and so it's not like it's money that's directly allocated to Clean Cars for All. It's available for Clean Cars for All. We want to direct it towards Clean Cars for All, but it doesn't. It's not 100%. You know, the districts have some discretion in terms of how they allocate that money. So there's some money that's available. We at CARB have made some choices, some discretion to allocate it towards Clean Cars for All, but the districts don't have to do that. So I think Olivia, if you want to, if you have the numbers in terms of where it's allocated, that's fine too. But I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah.
So for the
sorry, go on.
Yeah, I can give a quick summary of the numbers. So the solicitation was open to all the air districts, but for the Clean Cars for All air districts, where they're administering a Clean Cars for All program, there was 10.4 million that was awarded to those 5 air districts. South Coast was awarded about 5.2 million. San Joaquin was about 1.9 million. San Diego was about $1 million, Bay Area 1.5 million, Sac Metro 0.7 million. And so just to note again that for these funds, they can only use $3,000 of these funds towards a Clean Cars for All incentive. So they'll have to pair it with funding that they already have for Clean Cars for All. So I think, does that answer your question?
Gotcha. That's really helpful. And so this is within the larger Carl Moyer allocation. It's just that there's this 10.4 set aside that can be used, but isn't required to be used.
Yeah, so it's a separate pot, right, Aaron? It's like a reserve, so
Yeah,
it's separate
yeah,
from the Carl Moyer funding.
it's state reserve funding that the majority of the Carl Moyer funding has always been used in, at district air district discretion, local air district discretion. There's 10% that has been for state reserve, which is kind of directed towards state priorities. And for this year, because of the need, that money has been allocated towards the Clean Cars for All program. So there's a little pot that it still has to operate under the Carl Moyer, the guidelines, but it's directed towards the Clean Cars for All program.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mars. Okay, next in the queue, Bill Boyce, please go ahead.
Thank you. Bill Boyce, representing California Electric Transportation Coalition again. Yeah, I think I've got a handle on what the kind of the available budgets are, but question really is on what the burn rate is, specifically for DCAP and Clean Cars for All. Do you all have kind of like a average burn rate per month, and how much are those budgets? When are you going to run out of money, or the projections on that?
Thanks, Bill. I could take the DCAP portion and then I'll hand it to you, Olivia. So going back to the DCAP allocation, so right now, things are still fairly early in program implementation, even though it's been open since September of last year. I do want to emphasize that it has been a rolling rollout, right? So each month a region is open, and so and at this point and we have and in March of this year it went fully statewide. So DCAP now encapsulates all of the state from top to bottom. And so from our very preliminary data right now, which is it's been difficult to get at this point. And again, I want to reemphasize the fact that there is 143 projects, as I've cited before. It is difficult to gauge a accurate burn rate from the data that we currently have. We also have to make sure that and take note that this process takes up to 3 months for an individual to a participant to go through the process. And we also have to, and at any point in time, an individual may or may not change their mind in regards to the incentive that they receive. So again, I do want to reemphasize that DCAP does have a scrap option for those in non-regional CC4A districts. So that incentive is up to $12,500, not yet including a $2,000 charge card incentive. And then for the financing assistance portion, that is a maximum incentive value of $7,500. And so at any point in this application process, an individual may or may not switch between the two incentive pathways. So in regards to calculating a burn rate per month, at this point, because we have not yet reached that steady state of having folks, and this is where I want to caveat, like what we would consider a burn rate here, is that we still have not had enough information to formally have a burn rate calculation. So I hope that kind of answers that part of the DCAP burn rate question. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to Olivia regarding the CC4A burn rate.
Yeah, so for the regional Clean Cars for All programs, when we're looking at a quarterly burn rate, so how much they're typically spending per quarter, we look at the last 6-month average, so the last 2 quarters. And so overall, it's about 2.4 million a quarter, but that varies drastically for each program. So for example, San Joaquin has been doing 6.5 million a quarter for the last 2 quarters. So, and then we have programs that are just starting out, like San Diego, that's going through 0.2 million a quarter. So it varies drastically, and it can change, quarter to quarter. But based on what we have and looking at the remaining project funds, the money that's actually available to go towards incentives, and then also including the additional funds that were just recently appropriated through AB 100 to San Joaquin and Bay Area, and then also the Carl Moyer funds that are available. We estimate that for San Joaquin, they should be able to fund projects through fall of this year. And so it also is good to keep in mind that the programs kind of handle things differently for when they close. So they'll look at how many applicants are in their queue, and if they decide that exceeds the amount of funding that they have in their pot, they'll close to additional applicants, but they'll continue to process those applications in the months following that. So there's still is a funding available technically. They're just making sure they don't receive more applicants so that they can work through, because it takes time to work through that applicant queue. And then for Bay Area, we estimate that the additional funding should last them through spring of next year. And so that's when they would close to additional applicants. And again, this is just an estimate that we are estimating based off their average burn rate per quarter. But demand is always fluctuating. So yeah, and I can follow up with more detail in email if you'd like. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I will follow up more detail probably with Christian Corby along with that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, it looks like the next hand up is Brett Zuner.
Hello, thank you for the presentation today. My name is Brett Zuner with the Foundation for California Community Colleges. I wanted to add just a little bit more context. I think that might be helpful to the conversation. In terms of the expected demand on the programs, one thing that I think should be considered too is the ending of the federal EV incentives in September. And I do wonder how that will impact applications. So people who've applied recently, who when they applied, they were expecting to have the federal incentive available. When that is no longer available, will people still want to go through with it? So I think it would be good for everyone in this ecosystem to think about that, and then for CARB to maybe look at that data after the fact, and it might take a few months to see, but dropout rates and changes in demand, because it is a complex calculation for families to make and individuals when they go through the program. That was one piece. And then also for the statewide CC4A piece, I wanted to also emphasize that program is serving low population density areas and rural areas and more tribal communities than the regional CC4A. And it's the first time this type of incentive has been offered, the scrap and replace option in those areas. And so just looking at like some federal research from the last administration, they showed that rural programs take 2 to 3 times longer to reach the same adoption level for clean energy and clean mobility incentive projects and funding. So just keeping that in mind, that it's not apples to apples. And when we try to compare the regional CC FRAs to statewide CC FRA as if they were the same, it's kind of just a comparative error because you're comparing very different communities and the conditions are different. And then also looking at infrastructure and the importance of that for EV adoption, and then the unique struggles that rural and tribal communities face when it comes to EV infrastructure. And I know that the Energy Commission is looking into that, and there is the interagency work. So that's, I look forward to seeing like outcomes there, but definitely want to emphasize that looking at a brand new program versus programs that have had 10 years to build awareness, a brand, and then the disproportionality in EV infrastructure investment in the 5 big air districts versus the rest of the state. Comparing those and then trying to make a one-to-one is just factually incorrect and probably not a sound basis in reality. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Really appreciate all of that. Very insightful comments. Okay. Any other questions or comments at this time? Any more emails at this time?
We just got one email in.
Okay.
Okay, this email comes to us from Kai Clausen of Environmental and Energy Consulting. Question is there any clarity on next steps regarding the language included in the recently signed state budget?
I don't know if we have anybody on who can address that. I mean, there's many moving parts. So go ahead, Olivia.
Sure, I can start, and then if folks could probably fill something in. So there has been some amendments in some bills that that could possibly affect these light duty programs. So right now, we're still looking at how we're still assessing how that will affect the programs. But for the status of the programs right now, we don't feel the funds should be reallocated between the different programs, especially since our recent efforts have ensured that the programs that are experiencing the highest demand and closing their programs because of their applicant needs are getting additional funding through the other efforts that we've been doing so through Assembly Bill 100, like I talked about earlier, the 19.8 million getting allocated to those programs, and then also the Carl State Reserve co-funding. So right now, we're still looking at how we would respond to those bill changes, but let me see if anyone else wants to add anything, but that's kind of where we're at, I think. So yeah. Oh, the question for those, it was asking about recent bill changes.
Thanks, Olivia.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have any other comments or questions on the call at this time? We still have plenty of time to discuss if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question. And of course, you can always email us at cleantransportationincentives.arb@arb.ca.gov. If something occurs to you later. appears that we don't have any more hands. Nothing in the email. So, Catherine, back to you.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to start to wrap it up. Thanks to everybody who asked questions and gave feedback. I think this was a really excellent discussion. And we covered a lot of ground today, and we might still end at 11. So great news. So this year, while there isn't proposed funding, I think this meeting today really helped us lay out the status of our incentive projects and the potential policy changes for the projects. This was a great discussion on alignment topics, and we heard a lot of good considerations as we figure out how to implement program alignment. So thanks again to everyone for sharing your feedback there. Then we heard a presentation on the long-term strategy for clean transportation incentives, and you all shared some great feedback and questions around vehicle affordability and the shifting EV landscape. To finish this out, I'm going to provide some information on our funding plan development schedule for the year. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier in the presentation, but mid-June to mid-August are the more intensive months to collaborate with you to develop the proposed funding plan. As you can see, we have a lot of meetings planned for these months. In August, we'll have the second of the work groups focused on the light-duty vehicle purchase incentives and the long-term strategy, so the second in this series. And that meeting will be on August 6th. On August 14th, we'll be discussing the draft ideas for policy proposals in a workshop and recap. We'll recap those after the workshop at the evening community meeting a few days later. Staff will then write the proposed funding plan and post it to the website on October 10th, where stakeholders and community members will have an opportunity to review and comment on the plan for 30 days. We'll have an evening community meeting on October 21st to discuss the proposed plan, answer your questions, and listen to your comments. We'll then present the proposed plan and hear verbal comments at the November 20th board meeting, where you also, again, have a chance to provide those verbal comments. I'll wrap up our meeting with our contact slide. Next slide, please. We want to remind you of our open door policy, especially for those most affected by our incentive projects. We do encourage you to contact us if you're interested in setting up a one-on-one discussion about your or your organization's needs, concerns, and ideas for potential solutions. This slide has the emails of the main contacts for funding plan development. We also have a new funding plan engagement opportunities webpage where you can find our online meeting request form, a link to sign up for our listserv to receive email updates, and our calendar of meetings. Be sure to take a look at the calendar of meetings to stay up to date as new dates are released. Staff will share the link to all this information in the chat. As always, you can also reach us at the email addresses provided on the slide, including our clean transportation incentives at arb.ca.gov email. And so staff will drop that in the chat once again, in case you missed it. We really appreciate your attendance today and your engagement with us as we develop this funding plan. And we're really looking forward to continuing to collaborate with all of you. It's been a pleasure to facilitate today and to hear all of your questions and feedback. And I hope you have a great lunch and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And we will leave the contact us slide up for a few moments if folks want to take down any of the information here. But that concludes today's meeting. Thanks, everyone.